This episode is supported by Manscaped. Manscaped have kindly agreed to continue sponsoring the podcast from the 1st of February to the 28th of February. Between these dates, you can use our promo code GTM to receive 20% off all products and free worldwide shipping. If you've not heard of Manscaped before, they're now the leading company in male grooming. Their products range from face razors to nose trimmers and their famous Lawnmower 3.0, which is a product specifically designed for in and around your nether regions, so you no longer have to worry about snagging the bag. As a listener of Go in the Match, you get 20% off and free worldwide shipping with our promo code GTM. Head over to www.manscaped.com to have a look at all their range of products to grab yourself an absolute bargain. Welcome back to the Go in the Match podcast. Today I'm joined by Keifer MacDonald. Keifer is a match-going Liverpool fan and also a Premier League accredited football writer. Keifer, thanks for giving me time today, mate, and coming to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be on. Really looking forward to getting into it all.
Okay, so I want you to take us back to your childhood, growing up being a Res. Where were you born and how did your love for Liverpool Football Club begin?
So I'm from Derbyshire, so obviously probably about 90 minutes from Liverpool. But I'm quite different, to be fair. In terms of I didn't come from like a match-going family of Reds. So at home it's me, my mum and my brother. So obviously my mum wasn't really into football. And then obviously my brother and me it was kind of like left to find our own, entertainment and whatever. And obviously as young lads, everyone has a go at football, don't they? And whatever. And obviously through Sky Sports and whatever, like I say, my childhood wasn't going to the match. My first match was, I think I must have been about 13 or 14. So, it was a long time to wait, but yeah, so I just grew up with my brother, whatever, watching the likes of Gerrard, Alonso, all them kind of on TV, and that's kind of how I fell in love with Liverpool.
What was it about Liverpool, would you say, that made you support them? Because obviously I've kind of got a very similar thing with living on the Isle of Man. We can kind of really support who we want because there's no Premier League clubs obviously over here. So, very similar story with me. I always got an attachment to Liverpool, seeing them on the telly, and then having a bit of family over there as well, it kind of, when you're seeing them and seeing the atmosphere and the ethos of the club, that sort of stood out for me. Is that similar to you as well, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't pin one moment where I thought, loads of people say, it was this, this game or this moment or, I got taken to this match or whatever. Obviously, like I say, for me, it was just kind of, I don't know. It just kind of feels like it's always been there. Do you know what I mean? For as long as I've kind of been aware, if that makes sense. As long as I've been watching football, like I said, I couldn't define it to one moment. But like you say, it's kind of just. Obviously, everyone will say the same about their club. It's a perfect club. But I just feel like Liverpool kind of embodies a lot of, just kind of in societal things as well. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just got kind of the right stance on it and a lot of things. And yeah, just kind of the club that kind of fitted for me. And, like I say, growing up now and getting older and whatever, never looking back on that decision.
So what was the first match you went to that you can remember, and anything you can remember from your first match day experience?
Yeah, so like I say, obviously it was it's me and my brother and my mum at home. So obviously kind of got the Liverpool bug off my brother, who kind of didn't pursue it. So it was kind of like mine and my mum's thing. I kind of forced. She didn't really have a choice, I kind of made her watch all. Kind of it was kind of like our thing. And for numerous years we always tried to on the telephone line at 8 a.m. on a Monday trying to get tickets, and then we just never had any luck, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. But I think it was 2014. I want to say I think it was the 0-0 with Blackburn in the FA Cup, so it was under Rodgers, which like I said, I was 13 or 14, I think. And yeah, I always remember it. The game was on a Sunday, and on the Monday, I think it was a fifth round, I think. And my mum rang up and she got 2 restricted view tickets. And obviously, you get the tickets, you kind of get that adrenaline rush, and you're like, oh my! And then you kind of realize they're restricted views, and then the word starts running through your head. Do you know what I mean? You're like, oh my god, am I going to be able to see it and whatever? But yeah, it was just. I just remember that week was the longest week of my life. Do you know what I mean? Just waiting for that Sunday. And like I said, it was only an FA Cup game, so I imagine a lot of people jibbed it off. Probably the one where they save money and they think, oh, I'll leave that one today. But yeah, I just remember going. Like I say, going with my mum. We went up to Anfield. Must have been like a 4 o'clock kickoff or something. And we got there quite early, and you kind of just do all the things. Kind of gobsmacked for most of it. And then it's just kind of that thing of walking as we was in the old main stand right by the Annie Road, so It's just kind of that thing, you walk up and you see the green grass and you see the pitch, and you kind of just see some of the players that you've been watching on TV, and just kind of that thing of football's real. Then, do you know what I mean? It's not a TV program, because for the majority of my childhood, it was, as sad as it is to kind of say, like, it was always kind of never reachable. Like, it was never, I've never thought I'd do some of the things I've done since, but I certainly didn't think I would, be going to you know what I mean? When you go to your first game, it's kind of like, you can't describe it, can you? I'm sure it's obviously the same for you and a lot of people listening.
Yeah. I mean, something I was probably going to touch on then, I wasn't even going to ask this, but you mentioned like going in 2014. What would you say? Obviously, we've had the main stand change now. What was your sort of reactions going to Anfield then compared to now in terms of the stage itself? What's like?
Yeah, so obviously it's gone. Obviously, like, it was. So obviously 2016 when it got done, the main stand, and obviously I'd been in there a couple of times for the Europa League run, and then the Kiev run. I think that was a new main stand. I was in there for the Auto Cup. But yeah, it was just massive. I think it was massive for the club at the time, because obviously there's a capacity issue at the minute anyway with the 55,000. So, to think a couple of years ago it was 44,000 is quite, crazy to think, really. But yeah, there was just something about the main stand. Like I say, I've been fortunate to go to a lot of grounds, but I think football, and a lot of the new football grounds, like Tottenham's, your West Ham's, they just kind of feel soulless. And I don't think Liverpool, obviously it's only the main stand, but I don't think it has that. Certainly has a corporate feel to it. Don't get me wrong; everything feels a bit. It's probably not your first choice to stand to be in, but I don't think it's kind of lost the element of the club, if that makes sense. I don't think they've completely gone against everything. But yeah, it's the old main stand was, obviously, I'm sure you've been in it. It was really great, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I asked that because I remember going like for my first matches. Obviously, so I went in like 2006 for my first game, and seeing the main stand then compared to what it is now. And I mean, I was watching at the end of the storm, the documentary that they've obviously just done on us winning the league, and then they show clips in there of going up to the tunnel and seeing what it was like. And it took me back to just actually when I first started going, I was like, times have properly changed, haven't they? So it is strange when you watch documentaries like that and you go, that's what it was like. Obviously, I think like much like yourself, like not moving to another ground, to another place has been such a great decision by the football club. But it is a bit of an interesting conversation, isn't it?
I think definitely as well, like you say, probably the only gutting thing is probably like the tunnel. Like, I know the new tunnel's like fantastic and whatever, but there's just something about those old compact tunnels, like the ones you've had at Highbury and whatever. Just this, I think Goodison's a very small tunnel. It's very all on top of you. There's just something as a football purist that is just so great about that the kind of tunnel and the way it kind of brought up and everything. But I mean, this one's just as good anyway.
Like an intimidation factor, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what does the standard match day look like for yourself now? Because obviously, as we discussed, like for me coming from the Isle of Man, me and my mates, we probably have a certain routine in terms of pubs that we'll go to when we get off the boat, depending on what time kickoff is. So do you have a certain routine yourself?
Yeah, like it's similar to you kind of thing, depending on what time it is. But kind of, if we just take a 3 p.m, for example, it would kind of be, so we'd go into town. Obviously, I live in Manchester, so I'd get the train to Liverpool. And then there's kind of about 10 of us, the lads who I'd do the European aways with. So there's Matty Johnson and whatever. And we kind of go to McHale's in town, which is just on Lime Street. And that's just been our bar for like the past kind of, good couple of years. And we just always go in there. We'll probably get there for like 11:30, and then watch the early kickoff, and then probably stay there till about 2. Then go to the ground, have another pint in like the church or the 12th man, and then probably go in about 2:45 to 3 kind of thing. But obviously, if it's a 5:30, they're honestly hands down the best kickoff times. So you've got the whole day on the ale. Do you know what I mean? It's superb. And then obviously you come back into town and everywhere's karaoke, disco. So they're just fantastic. The 5:30s.
So obviously the situation we're in now with COVID, obviously can't go to the matches and stuff.
Yeah.
Talking about the match day though, your routine and everything, is that something you probably miss just as much as going?
Oh yeah. Like, I think, like I say, I was speaking before we went live just about, the kind of, not the buzz has gone this season, but obviously it's quite hard to replicate as like a match going fan, that buzz around the field. And like I say, it must be the same for the players. You've seen a lot of freak results this season. But just as big as the thing is like, the social element of it, seeing your mates, and especially in a time, like you say at the minute, where it's literally gone from this time last year, you can go out and do anything to, you can't even mix with some households now. It's kind of, a lot of people, football was their kind of, for a lot of young men as well, football was their kind of, thing. And I know a lot of people who've struggled with it, and I think it's a collective. Like I say, a lot of people have felt the same, because I don't think you can replicate that, that feeling you get at football. There's just something about it, isn't there? It doesn't matter if you go on your own or you go with 5 mates. It's just kind of that feeling of like everything, and as cliche as it is, for a lot of people, like everything's just forgotten for those 90 minutes. And it's kind of like the world just stops, doesn't it? And like now, obviously,
it's something to obviously look forward to as well. Like for myself, like, working all week and you're going to go to the match on Saturday. It's something to look forward to, isn't it?
Yeah, especially for me, like whilst I've been at university, it's always been like, it's never been like the 17th or the 24th. It's always like, right, if I get this week done, then it's Wolves at home, then it's Chelsea away. Do you know what I mean? And then it's PSG. Do you know what I mean? I've always used it as a bit of like a thing to look forward to, and you kind of breaks down your week, like you say. And for a lot of people, like I say, I imagine they're missing it terribly, which is, I can't see us being back in grounds in 2021, as sad as it is to say, especially at full capacity. We might see a couple of thousand towards the back end of the year. But, certainly, hopefully this time next year, things are looking a bit more normal, and that kind of, match day routine, because even like I say at the minute, you can't even go, well, especially here in England, you can't even go in the pub and watch it. You can't even watch it with your mates. You can't mix households. So it's like you've literally got the match for 90 minutes and then you turn your telly off and you go and cut your tea. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing else to do.
Yeah, the social element's gone of it. And I suppose I think we could probably all say we probably took it for granted, didn't we?
Well, I was saying to you again before we went live, the Atletico Madrid game, there was a few murmurs that, footy was going to come to an end the next day or whatever. And I remember I said to my brother, I was like, if there's one thing in the world that will never, ever stop, it'll be football, because it's, and I was like, football clubs rely on money. I never thought I would see football be played behind closed doors, bar like, racist incidents or like where clubs have been punished. But in like terms of a normality, I never thought behind closed doors football will be the same. So it's like I say, hopefully next year, it's as long away as it is. It's a bit more normal, but like I say, it's just in general, like I think that's why you've seen so many mad results this season. The Villa 7-2. I don't think that happens. No. The United 6-1 at Old Trafford with Spurs. I don't think that happens. And then it's like even like the 0-0 United at Anfield. I don't think that's a 0-0. Our record against the top 6, at Anfield in the past kind of 4 or 5 years has been phenomenal. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not great, is it?
So I know you've done your fair share of away days over the years. Got any particular grounds that you've enjoyed going to?
So to start domestically, Southampton's always a good one. Like the Leicester, kind of Burnley, they're kind of good ones. I think because obviously what's happened, we've been obviously the Shaqiri one we had the other year. That was a 3-1. That was decent. Like I say, Leicester was fantastic. Done it a few times, but the Boxing Day one, the other year one, Trent was just played out of his skin. Do you know what I mean? There was just something about that night. But obviously then in terms of going, I know you've done a few of the European ones. Probably like my favourite ground I've been to is probably Bayern Munich. Yeah. Because for me, like I said, growing up watching footy on the telly, to like be stood outside the Allianz and then stood inside it, it's kind of a bit of a pinch me moment. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, Jesus.
How does the European aways compare to the domestic aways for you? What's your opinion?
Obviously, to be fair, like the domestic aways are kind of great now because obviously we're doing so well. They were great, but as we were going the match, we were doing so well, and they were still sought after. Do you know what I mean? But I think the European aways, I don't know. It's just kind of the element of it. It's just something different because you can do the league aways and the domestic aways a couple of times. You know what I mean? A few times a season in the cups and whatever. But there's just something about the European. It's just different. You get a local boozer there, and you kind of stay the day in there, and then you might do 2 nights or 3 nights or whatever. I remember we did when we did Barcelona. I think we did 3 nights. Yeah. Certainly when we did the final, we did 4 or 5 nights, and that was just like, okay, there's a point where you miss your own bed, but there's what I mean. There's just like it's just like a lad's holiday. Do you know what I mean? That's the best way I compare it to. It's just you get up, ale, go to bed, ale. Do you know what I mean? There's just everything that you'd want from football, and then at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, if Liverpool win, it tops it off. But I mean, if they don't, it doesn't ruin your day or your trip. Do you know what I mean? You just get back on the ale.
Like Keith Salmon said in our first episode, there's nothing better than watching Liverpool win in Europe. And
Nothing.
I'd say the same with you. I think like the Europeans, you just end up going on some mad adventure, and it's like, you end up going to some places that are just mad. So like when we did Roma away, so we'd gone from the Isle of Man to Manchester to Bulgaria. We were in Bulgaria for like 2 hours, Bulgaria to Rome, and it was like just to save about 50 quid. But we just end up.
Yeah, that's it.
We never would have gone to Bulgaria if it wasn't for that route. And then on the way back, we did like Roma to Lisbon. We had like a night out in Lisbon, and then like 3 hours later, got a plane to Manchester. It's like you just end up on. You wouldn't do those on a domestics, would you?
I remember I was trying to explain it to my mum once. She said to me, I think one of them we went by Dublin. I can't remember which one. And she said to me, she was like, Dublin's the complete opposite way to where you're going. She was like, and I was like, yeah, I know. And she was like, why are you doing that then? And I was like, well, it saves about £12.50. Do you know what I mean? Like, all adds up, it doesn't, it's beer tokens, but yeah, it's just mad. I remember when we did the final, there was a few of us, and on the way back we went Madrid, then Faro in Portugal, and then we did there to Dublin, and then Dublin to Manchester. But when we were in Portugal, and we must have had about an hour and 30 minutes, and this lad was like, oh, there's a really nice beach around the corner. He's like, we'll go there for a bit. Anyway, he ends up saying it's a 5-minute walk. It wasn't a 5-minute walk, it was about 25-minute drive. So we ended up getting Uber. We must have been on the beach for about 35 seconds. We get on the beach, sand, do you know what I mean? And then as soon as like we got there, it was time to go. And it was just like, we're just in this middle of the beach in Portugal. It was just like, how are we here? Do you know what I mean?
It's just mad. Like, but then again, the domestics, you know, they're just as good. And obviously you say like, domestically doing so much better now. But
yeah,
I'd say like for the majority of the domestic aways I've done, we've lost, but we've had a great time because you know, like doing Burnley, like you mentioned there, like the away ground, it's in the cricket club. It's like
the cricket club is good. Shout out to the cricket club. The cricket club is great.
It's crazy, isn't it? But you just wouldn't expect that. So like the domestics are just as good. But
yeah, especially if you get the training, like it's just, especially all the coaches are quite good. I remember last year we done West Ham, and I went with my mate and his dad on like it was a coach. It was like 3 coaches combined. So it was some of the Spy and Cop lads, and it was just like it was Spirit of Strength. I think was on there as well. It was honestly the worst part of it was the match. Even though we won 2-0 or something, it was like I just wanted to get back on the ale. Do you know what I mean? It was just fantastic. And that's what you miss. You know, you miss the coach journeys where everyone's singing along, and you know, especially last season when it was like every week it was like 25 points clear, 20 points clear. Do you know what I mean? It was just great.
So you talking about away days and stuff there. What's the sort of like maddest story you can give us from those matches?
See, when you sent me through these questions, I laughed at this one, and I'm not sure. I would be surprised if you haven't seen it, but it was actually only done Atletico Madrid away, and I went with a lad called Ellis, and so me and him flew out on the day, I think. I went with another lad called Jimmy, and so basically we went in the square of Madrid. I can't remember what it's called, and we were in there. The Plaza Mayor actually it's called, and we were in there all day. You know, everyone's boozing, whatever. And honestly, it must have been. We went to this shop, and it must have been about €1 for a pint can. So obviously we just wiped the shop clean. Do you know what I mean? And before you know it, it's kick-off. And I remember we were going to the ground, and then someone starts cracking open a bottle of pink gin. I was like, oh, shit, right, as you do. They're necking that down, and honestly, I've never felt so ill in my life. And anyway, as it happened, so we get into the ground, and you know, I was an absolute state. And and so I've got into the ground. It must have been about 20 minutes before kickoff. So I've kind of just sat on my chair and closed my eyes. And Ellis has caught me like having a kick inside the ground. Like, you know, it's so loud in the ground, but I was just in that state, you know, you can kip anywhere. Anyway, so he films it, whatever, and he shows it me, and I was like, oh, you know, whatever. And then we're on the metro back, and he goes, I'm putting this on Twitter. And I was like, you there kind of thing. Anyway, we get off the metro at the other end, and it must have already had about 100 likes. And it ended up getting 45,000 views on Twitter. Just this video of me like falling a kip. And like my mum's ended up seeing it at work. I don't know how. It just went. It was just one of those things that just went so viral. And I remember my mum was like saying to me, she's like, "How have you done that?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like I thought it was fully going to go on like some like lad Bible things, you know. I thought they were going to pick up on it or something, but luckily they never. But yeah, I looked at it this morning because I seen your question. I think it ended up with 45,000 views, which, you know, I mean, can nearly fill Anfield once over.
I'm laughing because I've seen it. I remember.
Honestly, our mentions that now are just crazy. It was just like, because I don't know, you just lose track. That on the Europeans, you just kind of let yourself go, don't you? They're just like holiday. And as it stands, I think that was the last away I did. No, I did Chelsea in the cup, but like the last European away I probably do for a couple of years now till the world starts functioning. So at least I made the most of it.
So what something I want to get your thoughts on was the atmosphere in the ground. So obviously, the last like 5 seasons, obviously, was being successful in the Klopp.
Yeah,
That brings a great atmosphere into the ground naturally. But, things such as the boss nights that we've had, what the Spy and Cop lads are doing as well, bringing more flags onto the Cop, Jamie Webster as well. All these things have sort of made going to the match such a better experience, and it's sort of enhanced the atmosphere into the ground, and probably what you'd say it was in maybe 2010, for example.
Yeah.
There was a time where we'd go to the matches and it would be a 12:30 kickoff against Burnley on a Sunday, and it'd be like a morgue. It'd be dead.
Yeah.
Where most games now, the atmosphere, not even in the ground, but in and around the ground, is great as well. What's your thoughts on how that's transitioned in terms of the atmosphere, what it was like to what it is now?
Yeah, like obviously, as I say, I can't like speak massively about what it was like, as growing up as a kid, because like I say, I only went, but even like you say, under Rodgers and kind of, you just speak to people and they say, the whole Gillette and Hicks thing was going off. Even like you say, 2009, 2010 kind of thing. The atmosphere felt quite toxic, boycotts, whatever people march out. Even the 77 walkout in 2017, I think it was. So, it was quite a toxic place to be at times. And like you say, Anfield will be like a morgue on a Sunday at 12:30, or even a Saturday early kickoff, even a Saturday 3:00, and people. I don't think people were enjoying it, but I think what the Spy and Cop lads have done, and the boss nights, Dan Nicholson and Jamie Webster and all them, I think they've just kind of made it like they've made it just like you're not relying on the match anymore, like to have a good time, because they've made it more of a social. Like you've always had the pub and going into the pub and whatever, with whether you win or not. But I think they've kind of just created a bit of a culture, and like, obviously Liverpool's culture has always been quite unique, hasn't it? But just like adding, even like the Jamie Webster story, it's fantastic, isn't it? Like he's a local lad, he's done the aways, he's on the coach, and now he's like producing a career in music because of he played at a few gigs at Boss Night, and he got himself noticed, and it's just kind of stuff like that, and like I say, even Spy and Cop lads with what they've done with the flags. Just getting more young lads involved. I've done it a few times on the waivers, and like I say, it's just getting more people involved and getting more people what it's about, and the culture of it all. And I think again, obviously, it helps always on the pitch. If Liverpool playing well. But I think especially even the whole Klopp thing. Obviously, he's come from Germany, and even at the start when he come in 2016, 2015, whenever it was, he kind of give us a rocket up an arse at times. You know what I mean? Like in terms of I think there was the Crystal Palace game. I think we lost that, and I think we were 2-1 down, and people were leaving on 82. Yeah. And it kind of said, and that's where the whole West Brom thing comes from. The 2-2, doesn't it? Where the week later, I think we're 2-1 down in the 90th minute, and Origi scores that goal, and it's kind of like well, thanks for staying. That was for you.
Yeah.
And Klopp's definitely played a huge part in that. Even stuff at the end, when he does the fist pumps and he comes to the Cop and does the fist pumps, it's just kind of, it makes you feel involved, and it makes you feel a massive part of it. And that's all stems from the likes of Boss Nights and Spy and Cop, because it's made it an enjoyable place to go again, if that kind of makes sense.
Is that being like, obviously like you've said, like going into 2014, the days under Rodgers, going to now, is that almost being, I wouldn't say a more important thing than Klopp, but is that something that if we didn't have the Boss Night, we didn't have the lads doing what they are at Spy and Cop, would that make your experience as a fan less?
I think so. I think so, yeah, because it's kind of like the glue that holds it all together. Like you've got your fans and you've got the team doing well on the pitch, but there's something that kind of fuses them together. And I think it's like I say, that experience of making the match an enjoyable place to go. And like I say, people want to go to these Boss Nights, they socialise with their mates, but it's everyone under one roof. Whether we kind of win or we lose, it's that kind of feeling of unity, which is something that Liverpool, as cliche as it is, like you've always had the 12th man thing, do you know what I mean? But it's it does speak volumes, doesn't it? Like that's all happened, and obviously, yes, we've been so successful, but there's been times where we haven't been as successful in the last couple of years, and there's been bad results, whatever. And people go to the boss nights and they forget about it. Do you know what I mean? Or they're doing it's just been. I think it's played a massive part in the atmosphere, and that ultimately plays a part in the results, doesn't it?
Something else I wanted to touch on was the ticketing. Obviously, we've got a Liverpool. So like myself, you've got a members card as well, and we both know how difficult it is to get on that ladder for season tickets and aways. Wanted to get into the conversation about touting. Now it's a bit of it's
a sticky one, isn't it?
It is. It's a bit of we're opening the can to win scenario, but I think it's something that does need to be discussed probably a little bit more around the club, and not even just Liverpool, but maybe just the big teams. I've had different guests on this podcast from different clubs, and it does seem to be your top 6 that have this problem because you've got tourists, whatever else. It is a big thing like we talk about. And listen, I'm no saint. I've bought ticket off the tout before, because like you say, it's so hard to get tickets for the away games, and a game that you want to go to, you'll do anything you can to get there. What's your thoughts on touting in general, and what do you think the club could do better to stomp it out?
I mean, it's like I say, it's such a difficult one, but like, to be fair to the club, I know obviously when like Peter Moore came in and that, I know that was a massive kind of part of his job, whether it had any success or not, but they've brought a lot of kind of hurdles in to kind of prevent as much touting as possible. Obviously, they do need to know who's in the ground, don't they? In case of, God forbid anything bad happens, they need to have a record. So I think they've done obviously the season ticket amnesty and, allowed people to change names. But so I listened to the James Pearce one, and he was spot on with it. He said, if you have a season ticket and you decide, you can't afford to go, or you don't want to go, or whatever, you're not going to give it back to the club, or there's going to be a very few number of people who give a season ticket back to the club. You're either going to, especially with the Premier League last year, as we were doing well, people getting season tickets they've used for 5, 6, 7 years, taken off them. The fella was like, oh, I'm going to this game now, we're doing well. And it's such a, like you say, with the aways as well, as a young lad, it's hard to get tickets. Obviously, I'm lucky that, I have people that look after me in a sense, and obviously I have quite a lot of my own credits, but not for the aways and that, but like you say, it's a problem. I have mates, United season ticket holders, City season ticket holders, and they say it's all the same. You always have to pay over the odds because you can never get onto that ladder. And I would hate that to be my job, to decide how you open that ladder, because it's nigh on impossible, because you've got people who have been going for, 40, 50 years. And then you can't all of a sudden just say, to make it fair, because we're going to give you less season ticket, less away tickets, and give 100 tickets to just season ticket holders with no credits. It's such a difficult way, and especially with the supply and demand of Liverpool at the minute, and top clubs, and it's because of how well we're doing, you're always going to have that demand. So for touts, it's kind of like a perfect world, because they're always going to, if you don't buy a ticket off a tout, so if you stick to your morals and say, oh, I'm not buying that ticket, I'm going to hold out and pay face value, he'll just sell it to someone else. Do you know what I mean? So you're not really, you might think that you're being good, but you're not even stopping the problem. The only the kind of thing that I can see maybe having a big effect is the COVID-19 thing. If they do I know a lot of places like Ticketmaster and those kind of places are on about doing kind of like e-passport. So you've got to prove, if you've had the vaccine or you've had a negative test or whatever. I think when Anfield it reopened in December, they you had to it was like a ticket on your phone, wasn't it? And you had to go in that way, and you had to prove who you were. So I think that could kind of maybe be a hindrance for touts, and you could maybe see something that changes it, because ultimately the world's going to be completely different when we go back to football. With COVID, the track and trace, they're going to have to know who's in the ground. You can't just go to the Shankly statue and pick up a ticket for £100 now. Do you know what I mean? You're going to have to get it through an official source. So like I say, I would hate for it to be my job. Whoever is in the ticket office now who's thinking of a solution, I wish them all the best, because no matter which avenue you go down, you're always going to annoy people. You're always going to make enemies and whatever. So it's a fairly difficult one.
It could be the only positive we probably get out of COVID, to be fair.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, if it makes the away ticket slightly easier, I mean, that's, like you say, probably the only positive.
So obviously in recent years under Klopp, it's been some of the best time following the Reds win the Champions League, and obviously putting an end to the 30-year wait, winning the Premier League. Obviously being from the Isle of Man, me and my mates, we're lucky enough to be weren't lucky enough to be in the city, and seeing obviously all you lot all celebrating outside Anfield and the emotions throughout the night after Chelsea beat City. I've got to admit, seeing all that content over social media, obviously I was made up to win the league that night, but there was a massive part of me that was just so jealous.
Yeah.
Seeing all you lot, partying and being at Anfield, because following Liverpool since I was like 10, going to the matches, I've dreamt of us winning the league. All my mates have been in exactly the same mindset as us, just dreamt of it. And obviously for all Liverpool fans, we've not won the league in the way that we would have all wished. But not being there, not being at the ground, just outside the ground, that was still heartbreaking for me personally. But what was that like experience for yourself? Was it?
Yeah, it was. I didn't get to the to Anfield the night we officially won it, but I got to the night when we done the trophy lift. So when we beat Chelsea 5-3, and that was just, Anfield was absolutely rammed, obviously, because you've got people who should be, you've got probably 40,000 people who should be in the ground. Obviously, they're all outside Anfield. It was just bedlam, and there was just such an overriding feeling of joy amongst people. It was, and like for a lot of the people, we hadn't, like, especially for me, I hadn't seen most of my mates who I go to the match with since the Atletico Madrid game. So it was like the first time, a lot of them I'd been on this journey with, the last couple of years, Kiev, Madrid, all these seasons, and then to finally kind of see them the night that we lift the Premier League. Yes, it was gutting, when there's a part of you, even when Henderson lifted it, is just like dying inside, because even just for him, do you know what I mean? Like, there's players that will move on by the time we next win the league, it would have been nice for them to kind of have that and kind of close that off. But just being outside the ground, it was, like I say, there was just something in the air. It was just magic. Do you know what I mean? It was just, everyone was there, like I say, familiar faces. You were bumping into everyone. Everyone was having a good time. And obviously with the whole COVID situation, it was just kind of felt like a bit of normality in that kind of summer. Do you know what I mean? Like just that one night of like normality. Like I say, I was gutted the night we won it, and I wasn't at Anfield. But like I say, it was kind of nice for me because I was at home with my mum and my brother. And obviously my mum, kind of who I first went to my first game with, she kind of took me, and, that's kind of who I went my early years with, my mum. And then my brother obviously kind of gave me the bug. It was nice to kind of celebrate with them because I've never had that. Do you know what I mean? I've never been able to really celebrate because a lot of times I'm at the match, especially like Madrid, I was in the ground when we won it. Do you know what I mean? And I text my mum texted me and whatever. She was watching it, but it wasn't the same. Yeah. So that was kind of the silver lining of it. It was nice because I doubt I'll ever have that again. So it was nice to kind of spend it at home with my mum and my brother.
You touched on Madrid there, obviously won a Champions League final. Yeah. How does that night of elation compare to the Premier League? Madrid, I was in Madrid, wasn't lucky enough to get a ticket, but I was in there watching it, and even after in the streets were unreal. So what was it like in the ground?
Yeah, Madrid was just, I don't know, like it was, I've always kind of preferred the European Cup, and like something, again, I don't know if it's exclusively to Liverpool, but there's just something about the European Cup. And I talk to my mates who support City or, United, and they don't really get that. They're always like the league is the kind of the be all and end all for them. But for me, I'd die for the European Cup. Do you know what I mean? It's like the affinity that Liverpool has with it, and growing up, that's kind of what you see, don't you? You see just like photos and videos of yesteryear of when Rome, Paris, Istanbul. You see all these, and you just think, and even a couple of years ago, you think we're millions of miles away from it. So Madrid for me was just, I don't think I'll ever get topped, just because that moment when Origi put the ball, I was the third tier, I think, like right in that corner. And honestly, it was just the weight that was just lifted off my shoulders. Like, I can't imagine what was lifted off their shoulders on that went in, but it was just, you can't describe what it was like that night. And like you say, the streets after in Madrid, I think we was out till like 6 or 7 in the morning. Everyone was, like I say, it was just a big party, wasn't it? Everyone was there who you knew from the match. Whether you got in or not, everyone was just so happy to finally get that trophy.
There was some party, mate, because we were supposed to be getting train back from Madrid to Valencia, and then we went to the wrong train station, missed there, then we were stuck. Some of our mates that we were actually at the match with,
had got to Liverpool in time for the parade, and we hadn't even got out of Madrid yet. We were still in Madrid. We were supposed to be going to Valencia. It was just like.
Well, I think we did. We went on the Thursday and we came back on the Monday. So I remember we went to bed at like 8 on the Sunday morning, and then we kind of woke up at like 4. And I remember obviously one of us was just had the parade on the phone, and we kind of all like hung over like looking at it. And then like I think I got home on the Wednesday because I just by doing legs of the trip, and it was like a good holiday. Do you know what I mean? It was 7. I was gone for 7 or 8 days, but like you say, it was just like fantastic. And even like people who didn't go and they had the parade back home. I know a few lads who just didn't get tickets and they didn't want to go out, but just have that parade. You know what I mean? That was for them. That was like their kind of thing, because everyone, the lucky people had Barcelona. I know a lot of people said for them that night it was won. Do you know what I mean? Like they didn't need Madrid. Well, obviously, but Barcelona was like the night that wouldn't top it. And then for the people obviously who stayed and stayed in Liverpool, they got the parade. So I kind of think everyone kind of won with that. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah. So as I mentioned at the introduction of the pod, you're obviously a Premier League accredited football writer. I know that's something pretty recent as well for you. Is that something you've always wanted to do, go into that media side of things, and how much you enjoying doing that?
I'd love you to repeat that Premier League accredited writer. That sounded fantastic. It's just something that's come about probably in the last kind of couple of months. So I'm doing sports journalism at uni. And so, I've just kind of combined, Liverpool and kind of my degree, and it's kind of just seeing where it's taken me. And I've done I've done some really cool things. I've done a placement at the Echo in first year of uni. That was 2018. That was with James Pearson, Ian Doyle, top journalists for Liverpool, and that was just like surreal. That was, I went to Klopp's press conference, and again, there's a photo of me when I'm putting my phone on his desk, and I'm just there like looking in his eyes. Like, I'm just starstruck. I don't really get starstruck, but for me that was like when Klopp walked through the door at Melwood, and he's there, and it's just like the fact that he's real. Do you know what I mean? Like you'll never think you'll come into contact with him, but that was just, for me, that was like the time I knew that I wanted to do media. And I've done like stuff with the Anfield Rap lads, did that last year. And then like even more recently, I've covered the women's game at Anfield. That was a Merseyside derby at Anfield last year, and that was in the Anfield press box. And that was like, again, a pinch me moment. And then obviously this year I've gained my accreditation from the Premier League and the EFL. So I've been lucky enough, been one of the lucky few to get into grounds behind closed doors. I mean, it's quite a grim experience, but it's also a very like privileged position. I do think I'm very lucky, and fingers crossed that it's the start of like what I'll be doing for kind of the foreseeable future.
So what's the sort of end goal for you that you probably look at? You probably look at people like James Pearce working for the Athletic, and all the lads working at the Echo. Is that like your your target?
That's the goal. Yeah, to have, when anyone ever asks me, I always say to be paid to watch Liverpool, or to be paid to write about Liverpool. And like, the day I get that first piece of money for writing about Liverpool, I think, right, I'm doing something right. But that's probably the end goal, to do something, alongside that, report on Liverpool or whatever, or even just take it in different directions. Like, a mutual friend of ours is Keith Salmon, and obviously, he's done his book, hasn't he? And he's been someone who's been, absolutely top with me. I think first time I messaged him would have been like 2018. I remember I bought his book and I messaged him, and I was just ecstatic to get a reply from him. And then ever since then, I've just become, really good friends with him. He's got his little lad Charlie, hasn't he? And I've seen them about whatever. And like I said to you in the intro, didn't I? Twitter it's not a great place at times. It can be quite toxic, but for what I've done, and obviously it'd be the same for you with your podcast, it's great for exposure. And there is actually some really decent people on there who can help you and take time out and whatever. Especially I've found, obviously, like especially over the weekend when I covered Goodison for Everton versus Newcastle, and obviously even as a Red, it was a bit of a like to be at Goodison. Do you know what I mean? For behind closed doors, it was kind of a bit surreal, but like the amount of messages I got from people, just from lads from the match who I've met through Twitter and whatever, they're just all top. Just it gives you that bit of encouragement. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just remind you, Twitter is actually a decent place at the bottom of it, and it can help you do some good things. Because like, if it wasn't for Twitter, I don't think I'd be in this position as mad as it is, because it all helps with exposure, doesn't it? And getting your content out, and meeting people and connections, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a necessary evil, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is is it quite difficult then to kind of take your red hat off, being your fan sort of thing, and then put yourself into, a professional position? Because that's something I kind of touched on when I had James Pearce on the podcast in the first series. And he said, maybe at first it is quite difficult, but then you've got to concentrate. Is that something that you're probably like getting?
Yeah, I think it's just with everything. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, I've not covered Liverpool yet at Anfield, like the men's team, so I've never been like a press box when they scored. Do you know what I mean? So I've never had to control myself. But I think it is. I think you just like look at football as more, a whole, and just become a lover of football, if that makes sense. Like the site that I'm accredited for, I head up Sheffield United, so I'm in charge of distributing all the Sheffield United content, doing all that. And, even like going to watch their games and watching their games and whatever, whether it be at Bramall Lane or on the telly, just kind of like the excitement of watching football again. And just like, I always said that like I would never let my job interrupt me going the match, because that's something I always wanted to do. Yeah. But I think in the last couple of years, I've always said I'd be more open to covering different clubs. Obviously I'd love it to be Liverpool, but I remember I had a conversation with James Pearce when I was at the Echo, and he said everyone comes into the Echo, or everyone comes into a site like the Echo, and they all want to do Liverpool. And he said the reality is there's probably 2 or 3 people who would do Liverpool, and they're the ones that have been there the longest, and they're probably the best. Yeah. I think it was darts he said he was doing. I'm sure it was darts. He said he had to go and cover darts in St Helens, Warrington, Merseyside, and he said no one wanted to do it. But, it was his like detour to get to where he is now. And like for me, that's what I've done, going to Goodison, going to Burnley, going to Bramall Lane, hopefully that puts me in good stead to get my own position of, being able to cover from Anfield. And it's kind of like my own journey to get there, because, you don't just walk up to Anfield, do you, and get in the press box. It's a long process, but I'm sure, fingers crossed, it'll be one that's worthwhile.
So when you're working for the Echo, then you can thank me for coming on the
I'll come and do part 2 if I ever get employed.
So finally, the podcast is centered around going the match. So with every podcast we're doing, I want to end by asking, what are the top 3 favourite matches you've been to or seen?
Been spoiled for choice, haven't we? I'm gonna give Madrid a mention, but I'm gonna leave it out because I think that's an easy one to do. Yeah. So I'll say the obvious one is Barcelona. I mean, I don't even think I need to talk about that, but for the sake of this, I will. I mean, were you lucky enough to get over for that, or?
I didn't get a ticket for that, no. But something that's always struck me with that Barcelona game, and listening to Carragher's podcast, and he's obviously had the players come on and talk about Barcelona. He's had Robertson on, Henderson.
Yeah.
Did you, going up to that game, believe or not?
It's a weird one because obviously I think we played Newcastle there because I'd done the away leg, and honestly, at the Nou Camp, that was probably one of the best I've ever seen us play. I thought we were absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. And to come out there and lose 3-0, it's like, well, it's Messi, isn't it? He can hurt you like that. And then I remember, I think Salah got concussed at Newcastle, so Salah was out, and then Bobby was out. So it was Mane, Shaqiri, and Origi, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then I remember I read something on the morning. It was like Rhian Brewster could be in line to start. And so the lads I was living with at uni, they were like, any chance tonight? And I was like, oh, not a chance. And then my mate who I live with now, I was heading out the door. He was like, oh, see you later, whatever. And I said, next time I see you, I said, Champions League finalists. And he was like, yeah, get gone kind of thing. And then I remember one of my mates, he sent me a promo video BT had done. And I watched it on the train, and it was kind of like the Olympiacos game, the Dortmund game, those kind of Anfield comebacks, St. Etienne. And then I just remember as soon as I finished watching that, I was like, you know what? I was like, we get the first goal here. And then it was like, even at half time, it was like every time Messi was running at you, it's like, you think he can hurt you, can't he? And it wasn't until the second I thought we can do this. But then it's even at 4-0, if they get one, you've got to get another one, haven't you? So yeah, I don't think anything will ever top that night. There was just something in the air when you got to Anfield. Anfield was, well and truly up for it.
Are you kind of glad that you were there for that? Because I remember when I did the Dortmund game in 2016, lucky enough to go to that. And I remember coming out of there, it's something I've always touched on doing this podcast. When you're growing up as a Liverpool fan, you mentioned all the games, Istanbul, St. Etienne. Yeah. You always want one of them moments for yourself. And when you've got one, it's something you look back on and feel more fondly of, isn't it?
Well, I remember, so that Europa League run, I remember I got to Dortmund, and for whatever reason, my mum was having none of it that we were going. We'd done all like most of the groups and United, whatever. And then so we were first qualifying for the Dortmund tickets. My mum was like, I don't know, whatever reason we couldn't go. And And then I remember it like kind of 2-0 into like 10 minutes, thinking, all right, maybe she saved us a bit of money here. And then obviously I remember when Lovren scored, I was sat at home, must have been about 15 at the time, and I was absolutely gutted because I thought they're like a generational thing, aren't they? And Dortmund are, at the time, they're a solid European side, aren't they? So it was kind of like, it's the same again. It's kind of, you gutted that you missed out. But with the Barca one, I never really expected it to happen. So when it did happen, it was just kind of I think when the ref blew the whistle, you kind of think, I've got it, and no one can ever take that away from me, regardless of what happened in Madrid. You know that you've got that, and it's something that I'll bore my grandkids with for eternity. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just the fact that even Messi was playing like the greatest player of all time. Even just to see him in the flesh was bucket list stuff. But yeah, I was so glad to have one of them, because you don't know when the next one's going to be, do you? It could be 15, 20 years, and you might miss that for whatever reason. So to have that one, it was massive for me, I think. Yeah. Second match, probably go Bayern Munich away. That was like I said earlier, going to the Allianz. That was something that was just wow. Do you know what I mean? As like a kid growing up watching Champions League, you watch ITV, you watch Clive Tilsley and all them, you listen to them, and for Liverpool to go to the Allianz as favourites and absolutely dismantle them in the way they did, and that Mane goal, the first one when he sends Neuer for the echo, it was just that the whole kind of game was just fantastic, and the whole trip was fantastic. But for me, that was like that Madrid season. That was the thing. All right, we could win this because it was a proper. Yeah. It was a proper laying down a marker. Do you know what I mean? It was a proper, all right, these are, and they've only gone and won the European Cup a year later, right? They've recruited and they've got a different manager, but it's still Bayern Munich, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's definitely up there for me.
One of the powerhouses, aren't they? The European.
Yeah.
Really, and it's funny that because I did the PSG away.
I did that one. Yeah.
In the group stage, and in the group stage, our away, I think we lost every away game.
Yeah, it was Red Star, Napoli, PSG, wasn't it? Yeah.
And then we go and do that in Munich. It was like,
yeah, it was just ridiculous. Final one. I'm split here, but I'm going to go Leicester on Boxing Day the other year. It would have been 2019, when the Trent one, and I think it's purely because that Trent goal is my favourite ever goal. I think it's just the fact that he stands there with his arms out in front of the away end, and there's bodies going absolutely everywhere, and it was just one of them. That was the night for me. I knew, because we had the Club World Cup, didn't we? And coming back from that, and Leicester, they weren't on our tail, so to speak, but they were the nearest challengers.
Yeah,
I think they were a good 9 or 8 points behind us. So if they win that, it's 5 points, which makes it a bit nervy. But then to go there after coming back from Qatar and put that performance in, it was just kind of the league's done. Do you know what I mean? I think in every league campaign you have like a statement win. Do you know what I mean? One that says, all right, yeah, you're going to win it this year. And I think that was ours that year. It was put the ribbons on it.
I don't think there's any better way to finish the podcast than talking about Liverpool in the league, mate. So before you go, just a massive thank you for giving me time and coming on. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you very much for having me. It's been something I've really been looking forward to since you asked me. So yeah, thank you very much.
If you enjoyed that episode and want to keep notified for future episodes, please make sure you subscribe, follow and share, and of course, leave us a 5-star rating. You can now follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, all at Go in the Match, to keep updated for future episodes and updates on the podcast.